Welcome back, my friends. Today we are going to talk about commas separating coordinate adjectives. Now that might sound a little bit intense, like what is a coordinate adjective, but it is a little bit more intuitive than you might imagine. So first off, an adjective, we should already know that word. That is a descriptive word. It's some sort of description. Coordinate, if you just think of what coordinate means or coordination, it's when two things work together. So we're looking at a pair of adjectives working together to describe something. And sometimes when we have that situation, we need a comma between them. We'll talk about how to do that. So when two or more descriptions, adjectives, describe one thing or a noun, you will occasionally need to use a comma. And I know you probably hate me for saying occasionally. Like, when do I need one? When do I not need one? Let's look at it. So in this example, we have his dull, lengthy speech carried on and on until most in the audience were either asleep or preoccupied on their phones. So let's see what we have here. Our noun is speech. That is what we are describing. And our two adjectives are dull and lengthy. And you'll notice that there is a comma between these adjectives because they are coordinate adjectives. They are working together to describe the man's speech. But how do we know we need a comma there? Well, here's the rule. If you can switch the order of the adjectives or add the word and between them, you need to use a comma. So if we look at the example again, I have switched the order of the words, and we have his lengthy, dull speech carried on and on until most in the audience were either asleep or preoccupied on their phones. And switching the words didn't really do anything. The sentence still makes sense, and because it still makes sense, we know that those adjectives are coordinate. They work together, and when they do work together like that, you need a comma between them. Here's another example. His dull and lengthy speech carried on and on until most in the audience were either asleep or preoccupied on their phones. Again, we've added add into the middle of those. And because we can do that successfully and it doesn't sound weird or nothing sounds off, that means that we have those coordinate adjectives. So there are your two tests to figure out if you need a comma between adjectives. First off, can you change the order of them? And then second off, can you add the word and between them? Now, in order to do this successfully, you're going to have to figure out what an adjective is. So if you aren't comfortable with what an adjective is, that's kind of your first step, is you need to figure out how to find your descriptive words, and you need to figure out what they are describing. That's your first step. Once you've done that, then you can go ahead and experiment with switching the order or adding and between them. Now let's look at one more example here. If you can't switch the order of the adjectives or add and between them, do not use a comma. You only use a comma if you can add the word and or switch the order. Let's look at this sentence. An unmarked police car was patrolling my neighborhood last night, and I don't know why. In this sentence, unmarked and police are both adjectives describing car. But look at them. It wouldn't make sense to switch the order. It wouldn't make sense to say, a police unmarked car was patrolling my neighborhood. That doesn't make sense. No one would say that. Also, we couldn't say an unmarked and police car. That makes it sound like two cars are patrolling the neighborhood, right? And so since neither of those work, we know that they are not coordinate adjectives, and therefore, you guessed it, we don't need a comma between them. Now, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, you should be set.